Hello, hello, hello. What's up, people? Happy New Year. Happy new season. This is the first episode of the second season of What's on Your Shelf. I want to say thank you so much to each and every person who journeyed with us through the last season and taking us from one step to another. There is always an assumption that people don't like reading. And today I can say it confidently that it is an assumption, because I think along the way I figured out that there's so many people who've read so much, and that has given me even more desire to keep going. As we begin this new season, I think I just wanted to take a quick run through of some of the people we hosted in the previous season. And each and every episode had something for me especially to take home. And I know we had interactions in between, and a lot of people sent their comments and reviews regarding the various interviews and the various persons we hosted on that, during that season. And each and every person was different in their own way. To be honest, it's very hard for me to say which was my favorite. I have a lot of them that I've tied for my favorite, because I think I loved different people for different things. And for example, we started with Maurice, who was our very first episode. For me, with Maurice, my take home was Why We Sleep.
Why We Sleep, and I think it's a book I'll recommend to you. It's non-fiction. It's a book that talks about why we sleep.
Yeah, like sleep, or
it's why you sleep, like the reason as to why you need to sleep, and what makes you sleep, and how you should create a routine, and why it's important. And the reason as to why I'm recommending that to you is because it also talks about parenting and why sleep is very important for a child development and for their mental capability. Like, the moment I read that book, I started sleeping at 9:30. Yeah, like getting quality sleep.
Okay.
And taking away, because one of the things you need to take away your digital stuff, your phones and all that.
Yeah, and then from Maurice we traveled to one of the best conversations I think I had, and it did. The best thing is that it happened so early in the podcast that it gave me and the entire team energy to want to do more. Cory was a gem, and as a climate change enthusiast, somebody would have hoped that maybe we will focus so much on climate change, which we try to capture. But I think her reading and her opening up her house for us, and she was very free-spirited and allowed us to interact with her personal life. She allowed us into her personal space, spoke about things that I think otherwise very many people would not be comfortable to speak about in public. But it also allowed us an opportunity to learn and just to think deeply about certain issues. And have my favorite from Cory was Where is your husband? Where is your husband?
Where is your husband, Cory? Where is your husband?
Yeah.
It's just a book that talks about the 30-something-year-old woman who lives in the African society setup and is under pressure to get married, under pressure to get a man. And not just any man. You have to get a man with the right things, the right money, the right status and things like that. But that wasn't her. That is not. In fact, the man that she ended up with is a man who just not the right status, like a man. She's a corporate girl, and she ended up with like a guy who I think was it in arts or whatever, something. But yeah, so it's just a book about, and it also talks about women and the pressures that they have. So it talks about a place where she had to go and buy a wig to like, is this what beauty is? And to go and bleach herself. Like, she started buying products where she needs to bleach herself so that she can be lighter and so that she can really be that girl who stands out. It is the reality. And if you're not confident with who you are, you don't have safe spaces to talk about these things, because we talk about the fears. Because people are like, you're 37. In 3 years, you're turning 40. So how about children? Are you going to get children? You're 40. But what am I supposed to do?
Yeah, and then from Cory, I travel a bit, and well, I attended a certain summit, entrepreneur summit in Germany, and the host company, they do, which I have known for quite some time, and I've traveled a couple of times to Germany, and it's been courtesy of the Do School, and I had a chance to sit with the CEO and founder, Mr. Florian, and spoke about his book that he had launched, that, by the way, is now officially on my shelf, and had a very, very, very intense conversation on entrepreneurship, and who is really an entrepreneur, and what happens in the mind of an entrepreneur. And I think that conversation, as hard as it was, and I think one of the most outstanding for me with Florian was when he said that not everyone was cut to be an entrepreneur. Listen to this. To that entrepreneur today who is watching this podcast, Florian, who is also almost giving up. They look at the product, they look at the value they are offering, and they feel like, why isn't the world accepting this thing? Why aren't they seeing it? What would you tell him?
I would first of all tell them that don't worry, you'll be fine, and look at the things that work in life, your health and the people that love you and all that. The second is, I think it's a really good situation to be in, because every crisis, I believe, is a huge opportunity. And sometimes this means to realize that your idea for a business or a social project or whatever just wasn't all that great, right? And maybe it actually makes sense to close shop, learn from it, and come back much stronger. And maybe I've met so many people whose second or third or fourth or fifth idea was an incredible one. And they went through, I had 2 startups which were a total catastrophe, totally tanked. But they taught me so much about what I'm doing now.
Is closing shop not equated to giving up?
No, I think it's failing is totally okay. Failure is not a problem at all. Right? It is this old stupid sentence that you need to get up the next morning and come up with your next idea. It's also not a problem to try out being an entrepreneur for a couple of years and to decide, I'm much better suited to go into a big company or government or in a social organization, and I'm trying to drive change from within. That's a totally great decision.
Yeah. His book is here. It's called Our New World. And it's a journey to people and places building the future today. And I'm hoping we'll have a chance and we'll have an opportunity to review and maybe just talk about it, because entrepreneurship is still such a key topic. And most of the young people today who are trying to venture into business, and it's not easy. Trust you me. I'll tell you that story sometime soon. But we'll talk about this, Our New World. And from Florian, we had Esther. Esther was such a beautiful and calm soul. I've known Esther for some time, and that conversation opened us up to a conversation on Pan-Africanism, which is a topic she loves most, and talks about it with so much passion. And by the way, Esther, big up to you. Currently, Esther is pursuing her master's at the Cambridge University in the UK, and the most important part for me with Esther's interview is books made her. Books, reading gave her an opportunity to think through her life and chart a path that now today she is very proud of. And she even states that even her being at the Cambridge today was a result of her believing the things she read and picking herself up and going. She went back to school when she was 30. And that is the time she decided to go to school and say, I'm going to pursue higher learning. She had all the reasons to not to, because of she had a child, and life was not easy, and like any other person, it would be that been normal to just give up and say, you know what? But she refused and picked herself up. See where she is. She went back to school, started from diploma, did her diploma, did her degree. She had first class in her degree, and that is what earned her scholarship to do her master's at the Cambridge. So Esther's life in itself was such encouraging. And I remember one of the people commenting and say, just seeing her courageous enough to say she's going to pursue her education despite having children. And this, I think, happens to very many women sometimes when you have to sacrifice your own growth and development because of a family, because of children. And that in itself is a conversation for another day. But I think looking at her and looking at what she's been able to achieve was really has always been something worth noting, and the inspiration it can be to many young girls, especially those who are teen moms who feel like, now I have a child and that's the end of it. There's hope, and I think Esther's episode should encourage you more.
Books help to mold you. Books help to make you become the best version of you. And books keep you company.
Yeah.
When you live in a world bound by distraction, you find solace. You find life in books. When you read a book like The Best Laid Plans, you see someone being distracted by so many things in the world. But later, when you finalizing the last pages, the book ends making that person heroic. So I took that from the books that I read, the fictional books that I read, and put it in my life. I was like, okay, the life is hitting me with lots of distractions, but I must keep on going. Because through reading, when you read the fictional books, you'll realize, oh, this person is going through a lot of things. But later, they emerge winners. So when the world was offering me negativity, when the world was trying to dim my light, when the world was trying to show me that I can't, I show the world that I can.
From there, now we went to the master of neatness. And I remember one person saying that, that lady is too neat. Joan Zoya, just looking at how meticulously she had organized her shelf. I hope I'm trying. Mine is not there yet, Joan. Mine is not there in colors, and she played around. Pink books on one end and this. And now she had like a small shelf for her daughter. But for me, the most outstanding part of that conversation when she spoke about books piracy, and it's such a big issue in our part of the world today. And I remember when I was in Germany, when I spoke to Florian and I asked him about piracy, he had never heard about book piracy. He didn't even know that people pirate books. Yet, here in Kenya, most authors are worried about piracy. And I remember, I think a day or two ago, I was on the streets, and this is one of the most pirated books, Becoming, by Michelle Obama. And if you see the pirated copies of that book, from the face, you just see piracy. And I think as a people, that conversation is something we look forward to having and engaging in over and over and over, and just looking at what it does to the author, how it robs the author of the hard work and the passion, and even the people who are selling books and the consumers of those books. It's high time, I think, we took time and thought through how piracy robs authors and the entire people who work in that value chain to ensure that you have books to read.
People tend to use the excuse of books being expensive for them not buying books from the right channels. But I feel like if you're really interested in a book and you respect an author's works, you will make the effort to afford this book. Even in other forms, you cannot afford a physical copy. You can afford an audiobook from a legal platform, not just an audiobook you buy at 50 shillings. So I feel people don't respect books in my city, in my country. People don't respect books enough to buy books. in my own small capacity, I have become an online bully in this regard. I have no apologies. I see a pirated book, I will ask you, are you aware the book you're reading is pirated? Because some books are so badly produced, you can tell that they are pirated at a glance online. I have not seen the book physically, but I can already tell you this book is pirated. There are options. You do not need to be stealing from an author in 2023. It doesn't feel like stealing to you. You feel like you're supporting the work of the author. You're not, because the money never gets back to them. It's getting back to the hands of a thief.
From Joanne, we went to Obed's, who is a travel consultant, and also we had a lot to talk about with Obed's because he is read vastly, and from local politics to philosophy to international relations issues, because that is what he does on a day-to-day basis, and he's an international relations expert and a travel consultant. By the way, you can find Obed's on X. Together with Mizani 254, I think they host regular spaces on X to discuss very many issues, so check them out. But I think one of the most outstanding thing for me was one of the books he was reading that I think caught me off guard, The Sex Lives of African Women. Yes, this is what he had to say. The sex lives of African women.
Yes.
What?
Let me tell you, it is very bad manners to try and restrict people to what they can do. My principle in life is live and let live. That's me. And I think as long as it works, we have, for a long time, women have been closeted a certain way. But reading those stories of women about their sexuality, their views about sex, is eye-opening. And I love the fact that people can feel comfortable to discuss what people call a taboo subject in the way those women discuss their stories. And if people can talk openly about something that brings people to the world, because you are a consequence, me and you are a consequence of that.
Yeah.
We are here because it happened.
Yeah.
We should be able to talk about it comfortably.
Yes, and then from Obed's, we traveled all the way to Kibera. We met this guy who I think to date is the most talked about. He was the street's favorite, Gizer, who is somebody who is in the garbage space. He runs an organization, Kibera Going Green and Clean, and has done a lot with the youth in Kibra in that environment space. They run a lot of initiatives, and I think it was an honor to just go into his space, see what he has done with a very basic, simple room where very many young people come regularly to come and read. But we had a beautiful conversation. I think his was the longest interview I had in that entire season, because we must have recorded for several hours, must have been 3. Whatever we had on air was 2 hours of a seriously summarized version of that. And Gizer has a beautiful brain. And I think, I don't know if you've checked out our TikTok, his video has the most comments on TikTok. Actually, what's on your shelf is also on TikTok. Follow us and like, interact with our content in that space. And he has elicited a lot of conversations. If you go to that video on our TikTok, you'll see there are a lot of people who've added their voice to the sentiments that he had. He spoke about governance. He spoke about agriculture. He spoke about environment. But for me, the most outstanding thing that remained in my head is when he was speaking about Wangari Maathai's book. And he spoke about how we've been farming the wrong way. And I think from that day, I've gone ahead to read quite a bit on that issue. But first, listen to this. The challenge for Africa. Tell us about the challenge for Africa.
Wasee wetu wengi wame misinformiwa. Unaona? Tulikuja tukatolewa from what we used to practice, tukapelekwa kwa vitu zenye si hatuelewi. Unaona? Alafu tukachanganywa sasa hata tuelewi anything. because unapata alikuwa anasema kama mama angekuwa analima unajua kwa mlima ile round hivi in terrace form ingekuwa easier juu ingekuwa ina hold hiyo topsoil but sasa unajua yeye analima ile anachapa mchanga ikikuja chini across unapata time vote itanyesha hiyo yote inaenda kwa river and alikuwa na explain that's why unapata sahi there are so many rivers zinapitisha maji ya red than clean water because wase wote wanalima the wrong way unaona hakuna wase wenye wanalima the right way hapo kasema mother akiendelea kulima hivyo akiachia watoto wake hiyo shamba itakuwa bad juu already amelima for 30 years the wrong way unaona akiachia hata watoto wake haina any value so alikuwa sema the next coming anapiti the next generation which is coming because sasa unaona hizi vitu watu wameanza kupanda chakula na maji unaelewa hapo ndo tutaelekea because hakuna nutrients kwa soil wasao wamekuwa kilima the wrong way wasao wamekuwa wakifanya like vitu za zieleweki unaelewa wanapiga dawa afu tena point nyingine ni ya dawa unaona wanapiga chemicals kwa plants na initially before colonialism ikuje tulikuwa tuna plant plants without chemicals unaona sasa mtu anapiga chemical na hii chemical inaingia only 1% fertilizer inaingia tu kwa hiyo plant only 1%, hii ingine yote inakuwa washed away na mchanga.
Yeah, and can you imagine that we might be doing things today which we are thinking or believing that we are doing the right thing, especially as far as agriculture is concerned. We are using pesticides, we are using insecticides, we are using fertilizers, we are using chemicals that in 20, 30 years from today, maybe the pieces of land that we are harvesting from today will become barren. Take time to think about that, because that has gotten me thinking so much. And I think I would really want us to have a conversation on food security, but just looking at agriculture and what has changed, because agriculture has been the backbone of the Kenyan economy for the longest time. But of late, Kenya is food insecure. You see a lot of reports on the media on several places in several parts of the country that are undergoing food shortages, and I won't even talk about the northern part of this country that have been worst hit by droughts and floods in subsequent seasons. But let's have that conversation. I'm hoping that on this coming season, we'll have an opportunity to have an expert, an agricultural expert, maybe who will help us understand that space and say, what can we do? Because I hope that we can get that as a people to figure out how can we do our farming in the best way. But big up Gizer together with the team in Kibera and the good work that you guys are doing. I'm hoping to interact more with you guys. I'm going to host one of his kids, by the way, one of his mentees is also coming up in this new season. So watch out for that. And then from Gizer, now if you think you've read, we hosted somebody who has read. She goes by the title Sucker for Coffee. Faith challenged, I think everybody had, because she said she had read over 800 books. You told me you have a tracker. You track your reading, and you have crazy numbers.
I track a lot. I track my reading. I track my physical books. I track my TBR. I track my wish list. I track everything.
How many books have you read so far? You've said 91 for this year?
For this year.
I'm looking at how many books have you read since you started?
I can tell you the numbers since 2016, mid-2016 till now. It's 821.
800. Ladies and gentlemen.
Very
I don't know.
few books.
She's only read 800 books
Only.
since 2016. And you who is watching what's on your shelf, when you hear such figures, what comes to your mind? Faith also brought in a very good dimension to the conversation, and just being in that space where she reviews books. She has a beautiful blog, Sucker for Coffee. She has her Instagram page, Sucker for Coffee, and also she's available on X. So check her out and also interact with her, and let's keep building this community and see what we can be able to do together. And the very, 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 very last episode of that season, we sat with Esther Wanjiru Kaburu. Man, I think that episode was therapy. My conversation with Esther, we spoke about her 2 books. She's an author. She's authored 2 books. And on that day, she just launched her second book. And her first book, The Power of Self-Love. And then this second one, Take Your Power Back. I realized she spoke so much about your power. Check out that episode. Listen to the things she opened her life bare for you and I to get to learn and interact. But this quote from her remains my favorite. Talking about addiction, which is one of the pronounced words on the cover of the book. Addiction sometimes goes beyond self, where somebody has no self-control whatsoever, and they want to come back. You don't even know yourself. You're lost in whatever form of addiction. What worked for you when you realized that I'm back to that alcohol, to that partying, to that clubbing, and to that thing? What worked for you?
I would say spirituality worked for me. And I'll revisit the words, the universe is always speaking to you, pay attention. I started listening more keenly to what I was feeling when I was sober. Because when you're high in the moment, it's just high and happy. But if you are to pay attention to the nudge that is deep in your belly, in the moments of soberness, there is a message that tells you this is not the way to live, this is not you, you're better than this, you're... A lot of time, and I did it. The solution is to go back and fill the cup again, go back for another night of partying, go back. But then you run dry at some point. And a lot of people who are not able to capture this now become actual addicts. Because what that was is functional. For instance, if I can point to my drug is alcohol. I won't even say was. I still take alcohol. But alcohol no longer has power over me. So you have to revisit even the lineage. I come from a lineage that I've seen people destroyed totally and had do nothing with their lives because of alcohol. Nothing that makes you and me special. We can succumb to that. It just takes one moment. So what worked for me is paying attention to that voice in the moments of soberness. I don't know what name you give it, but that voice that is in your gut. Next time you're sober, pay attention to it.
Yeah, and for sure, as a person, I think there are those moments in time where you have to really go back to find who you are and encourage yourself, pick yourself up, because I think that has been a very key message in all the people we've hosted who found themselves into places they are in out of taking that journey of self-discovery. Where you are at with your life, where you are at in your projects, what are you up to, what are you doing for 2024. Let's keep interacting, let's keep engaging. And this new season, I want to believe it's going to be really, really, really awesome, because our partnership with Nuria once again will allow us to talk to authors, because I think we're going to be talking to at least 2 authors every month. And that, I hope, will be an encouragement to those of us who are trying to write. And I'm going to talk about writing books, because there are a couple of books I have on my shelf that we're going to talk about. And send us also thoughts and feedback on what you think. Which was your favorite episode? Which one did you like most? Who was the most outstanding out of the people we hosted in that last episode? Or who would you want to see come back to the episode? Because that also can happen. Yeah, if you feel like there's somebody who there is a conversation that we didn't conclude, feel free to share that feedback with us, and be sure that we will get to have that person seated here. One of the key things people teased me, and a lot of people asked me off the show, like, you keep talking about people's shelves. What is on your shelf? And today, for this first episode of this second season, I'm going to journey with you through my shelf. So this is what's on my shelf. So I don't know. I don't know if I have a particular way to describe what my shelf is, or. But what I can say, the books I treasure most, the ones that I've constantly bought for myself, are books in the film, media, and TV space, because I'm in that space. I learn a lot, and I train in film and photography. I love watching good stories. I love creating, and I love also watching good stories. So on my shelf, there are a lot of books that are talking about something. I think I'll start down here with this series. This is a series of books called Master Shots. They are a series of 3 books. There is volume 1, 2, and 3. Master Shots. How do I say it? It's a summary of shots from very popular movies that directors now talk about the ideas behind the shots, the camera movement, the camera angles, why that shot worked and why other shots would not have worked. So Master Shots remains one of my favorite buys, and I had to get, when I got volume 1, I had to go for all the 3. There are 3 volumes that exist of this. If you want to know, especially to understand the people who do Hollywood films, the directors and directors of photographies, the thought processes behind certain shots that they take. These ones are, and also closer to Master Shots, is one of the guys who people have spoken about most, Unbounded, by Boniface Mwangi. For me, I think one of the key works of Boniface Mwangi, I got to know Boniface Mwangi during the post-election violence, and he has written his book so well, and he's captured a lot of those bits and pieces of his story and his journey in this book. And that, I think, is that up here. I have a couple. There is Shot by Shot. This one talks about film directing, and then there is a story. I love this one. This book talks to you about the art of writing a story, because you don't just land on an idea and you write it. It helps you just break down the process and help you examine how you want to plot it, all the elements that will make that story interesting. This one, directing feature films. This also helps you with the same thought process. And then there is the writer's journey. The writer's journey. I had to think a lot about what makes a good story, and I want to say this, that a good story is not an accident. You can't just wake up and land on a good story. There is a thought process that must go into it. There is research, and then there is also now the arrangement and you sitting with it and choosing to say what you want to do. This one, directing actors, there is, if you're doing film, if you're doing drama, what do you expect from the cast that you have on your film? How do you want them to, how do you coordinate with them? And this book is very elaborate on creating memorable performances in film and TV. So majority of my books, the ones I really hold on dearly. In fact, by the way, those ones I don't even give out. If you want to read it, you have to sit where I am. You have to read it as I'm seeing, and you have to return it where you got it. Other than that, I have a lot of other favorites. I have a very random shelf, and I get books depending on certain things, and I think I want to count down. I don't know if I can do 5. Can I do 5? So that I run through top 5. Other than the film books, those will always be my favorite. Those ones I will always hold dearly to my heart. So I will not pick them for my top 5. But I want to see some of the books that have really, I wouldn't say, the books that really did something to my mind. But some also just history and the things I like. And top of this list is this book. The book The Big Conservation Lie by Mordecai Yogada and John Barrier. Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, if you read this book, it will leave you with a lot of questions, because Mordecai, who is a conservationist and has been in that space for a while, together with John Barrier, who by the time they were writing this was a journalist. I don't know if he still practices journalism, but they've opened up that conservation space, and they've said things that I'd want you to find this book and read. It's mind-blowing, because I think there is a place where they're talking about how some of those conservancies, the indigenous groups that are living in some of those places, have to be moved or have to be pushed to places where most of the times or sometimes are not very habitable, but because they are obstructing the view of the tourist and the people who are supposed to pay to watch the wildlife. These guys are supposed to be hidden huko nyuma, wageni wasiwaone. But also they've spoken about very many things. I want to admit that some of them are very controversial, and I cannot say that I have facts, but if there is one of the people I would really hope I will host on this podcast is Mordecai Yogada. I've seen a lot of his works. He has a podcast, I think that's also available on YouTube. It's called Maisha Kazini. Please check it out. Listen to what that guy is saying. For example, recently I watched one where he was talking about there is an outbreak of hyenas, and he was talking about where do you think the hyenas came from? Why would we have hyenas all of a sudden coming into places where residential areas? And I think he pointed out something that I'm yet to investigate, because he said that ask yourself, does Kiambu County have an abattoir? Where do they dispose of the waste and the heads, the intestines of the things that have been, that are supposed to be disposed from those slaughter processes? And actually, when you think about it, waste disposal is such a key thing in this country, and I think we don't manage our waste well. So one of these Fridays, I hope to have Mordecai on this podcast, and he'll help us understand that whole conversation on conservation. Conversation on conservation. Long Walk to Freedom. Long Walk to Freedom, I've been a fan of Mandela. And I bought this book. I loved it. I loved the history part. I found it too slow, honestly. I found it too slow. It was good. Took us through journeys. Took us through his journey through education, how he ended up being who he is. And I think it's a very good book to check out. So when you find it, read it. But also, if you've read it, tell me, what do you think? Am I just saying my own things? I found it slow. Napoleon Hill, Think and Grow Rich. This one, I think anybody who was starting to think about money, looked for this book, Think and Grow Rich. There are two books that are very important on this shelf. There is the Constitution of the Republic of Kenya. Yes. And the Bible. Those two, I won't rank them. So I've spoken about The Big Conservation Lie, Long Walk to Freedom, Napoleon's Hill, Think and Grow Rich. I'm yet to read Our New World, so I won't really rank it. It's a book that has been done. The font is very good size. The way it's been done, the quality is really good. So it's really, really, really enticing to read. I've not read it yet, so I won't rank it. Another book, one of my favorite, Freedom and Security. Can we have both? Can we have freedom and security at the same time? This is Gado's book. I love this book because it's unique. And this one, by the way, I bought from Gado himself, autographed to me. It's a collection of his cartoons. Gado does political satire in forms of cartoons, and he talks about things that very many people will not talk about if you look at those cartoons. So I found this very, very creative, and just having a collection of some of his best and some of his favorite conversations and stories in this book. So I'll have that as my fourth, and then last but not least, to be very honest, now this space has so many books that I want to talk about. I have a collection of some very classic Kenyan novels, like this one, Betrayal in the City by Francis Imbuga. Francis Imbuga, one of my favorite novels by Francis Imbuga, Aminata. For those people who know that play, Aminata was a play. So I'm split between these books because no, I know the fifth one. I almost forgot. Child Soldier. This is the first book I ever bought myself. And funny enough, I only read it last year when I started this podcast, because I was going through my shelf and I was saying, why should I be sitting with people and talking about their shelves, yet I have dozens of books on my shelf that I bought that I had never read. This is a book I bought, I think, randomly one day on the streets. So during this December holiday, I chose to pick it and read it. It's a beautiful story. It's a beautiful story because this guy has spoken about, I've always wanted to understand the war in South Sudan, and people talking about child soldier and being child soldiers and them being coerced to fight as soldiers. Most of those children, especially who I know who've shared the experiences, didn't really enjoy being child soldiers, but how they got there. But that book has detailed a beautiful story of that boy who was picked in the grazing fields one fine afternoon, and they were promised education. We're taking you to school and we're going to make you look nice and dress nice and be as intelligent as those people you see. And that is how he was recruited into the, I don't know if I want to call it army or those people, the fighters. He became part of those groups that were anti-government fighters. There are a couple of books. This one I recently bought from Troy. I was at a book event where Troy was speaking, and I got his book, signed and autographed by him. I've read only one book. It's a collection of short stories. I've read only one story. And I'm hoping that one day when I finish it, I will be able to sit here and talk about them. I wanted to encourage somebody who wants to write. And I think one of the key things I've learned throughout that season of What's on Your Shelf is that it takes you just starting. Just put together your thoughts, whatever it is that you have in mind. Put them somewhere. There are very different books that I think opened my eye to. For example, there is this book by Kitui Joseph. He say Kitui Jodefu. Now you see me. This guy has written a very interesting book, and I'm hoping we'll have him here. One day we have him here and he's going to talk about this book. He's written, it's a collection of very short encounters and experiences of his that he has documented, but he has written them in a very, very, very beautiful and fun way. That when you read some of those things, you can almost see and be with him in that location. Kitui Joseph, we're going to have him on this podcast. I am a big fan of Wala bin Wala. Sasa kwa sababu kwa wale ambao wanazungumza lugha ya Kiswahili, Guru Wala bin Wala, niko na chapisho zake, kuna kitabu hapa anasema dibaji za maisha. Dibaji za maisha, niko na dibaji la kwanza, dibaji la pili, ya tatu na la 4. Kila dibaji ina misemo 500 ambazo haswa zinafaa kutuongoza katika maisha. Lugha, utajiri ni ndoto ya kesho. Utasoma ni misemo fupi ambazo amevikusanya na akaeka katika kila chapisho kina semi 500. Kama hii, mtu hakuwa awavyo, hawi asivyokuwa. Mtu hukua awavyo, hawi asivyokuwa. Ndugu yangu, kama wataka kuielewa lugha, Wala bin Wala ni guru wa lugha ya Kiswahili na amefanya mambo mengi sana. Ana kituo kimoja pale Ngong Matasia, kituo cha Wasta, ambapo niseme amekusanya mambo na ni kama museum hivi tuseme. Museum mnahitaji kwa Kiswahili, ndugu zangu. Wala bin Wala amefanya kazi nzuri sana kwa lugha ya Kiswahili na amekuwa na tuzo, zile anatuza watu ambao Jesus Christ, can I even speak good Swahili for 1 full minute? Let me try. Wala bin Wala, museum naye sikumbuki ni nini. Wala bin Wala ako na kituo cha Wasta pale Ngong, na anafanya maneno mengi sana katika hiyo fani ya Kiswahili, na anatuza watu ambao wanafanya vitu kadhaa katika hiyo space ya Kiswahili. Ladies and gentlemen, go check him out. Check out Wala bin Wala. He's done amazing. I sat with him and we spoke about poetry, and I'm gonna be uploading that interview sometime soon. And tulikuwa tunaangalia tofauti kati ya spoken word, kwa sababu sahii wasanii na waandishi wa kizazi kipya wana ile ambayo tunaita spoken word, ambayo ni matamshi ambayo yameandikwa kwa njia fulani na kuzungumzia maneno fulani, na tulikuwa tunaangalia kati ya spoken word na shairi, kwa sababu kuna shairi zile ambazo tulijifunza shuleni na zilikuwa zinatahiniwa. Tulikuwa tunaongea kuhusu mishororo, mizani, nini ingine. That interview will be coming up sometime very soon. But it has been an interesting journey to interact with books, and there is so much wisdom. And there is a conversation that, a debate, I would say, that started recently when we uploaded that teaser to say that this new second season was coming. And somebody was asking, does it mean that everything that is in the books are right? I don't think I read to say whether something is right or wrong. But I think I'm better placed with that information than without it. Because when those thoughts disturb your mind, and when you're thinking about certain issues, when you're thinking about certain principles, they're driven by something information you've interacted with from somewhere. So let's keep reading. Let's journey together. Tell me, what are you reading? What's on your shelf? I'll be happy to host you. Who do you want to see on this podcast? Do you know of any readers or any book enthusiasts or any projects? Because this time we're going to come even to those community projects that you guys are doing, as long as it's encouraging people to read and acquire information. Our partnership with Nuria Bookstore will allow us also to interact with a lot of Kenyan authors, and I'm hoping that will be of so much benefit to you, especially those who want to venture into that space. Our partnership also with the Kenya National Library Service, which I want to believe will also give us an opportunity to not only have a national outlook of what our literature looks like, but also will give us an opportunity to continue creating content that generations that are coming after we will be gone will find something that we documented and kept for them. So this marks the end of this first episode. We begin officially next week. Thank you so much. This has been What's on Your Shelf. I've been your host, Mulere Mike. Thank you so much to the entire team behind the cameras and every person who's made this possible, from the people who've supported this podcast on and off air. We are really grateful. And to the new readers, to the people who are in the school spaces, we will also be having special editions of school-based literature, and I'm hoping that also will create a very good opportunity for us to interact with knowledge at that level. The teachers, the literature teachers, the school principals and headmasters, feel free to reach out and let's talk about how we can improve this space and make reading a normal thing for us. And through that whole season, I can confidently say that a lot of people are reading. That thing that they used to say, if you want to hide it from a black person, hide it in a book. There are a lot of us who are reading, and I want to encourage us to keep doing that. Let's keep writing, let's keep reading, let's keep interacting. But above everything else, see you again next week, same time, same place. God bless you, and let's journey together through this brand new season.